Revelation 1963. From the 20th and 21st of June 1941. The Spirit of God blows where it will. The Spirit of God blows where He wills. These words are again easily misunderstood, in that the divine will is made a prerequisite for the working of the Spirit in the human being, and this can easily lead to the assumption that it is not the human being but God who determines the receiving of wisdom from God. The will of God underlies everything that is and that happens. Thus the divine will must also give its consent when the Spirit from God unites with the spiritual spark in the human being for the purpose of instruction and imparting spiritual truths. Hence God's will certainly be the first prerequisite if the Spirit expresses itself in the human being, yet it is not within divine will to induce a person to accomplish a task without his will, which can only be fulfilled through spiritual activity. Spiritual working can never be achieved in a state of compulsion. Spiritual working is solely dependent on the human being, and spiritual working requires an exceptionally high degree of maturity. It must be preceded by self-improvement, but this, in turn, is striven for by the human being's will, and God gives His strength and blessing for it. The working of the Spirit depends on the human being's attitude towards God. Those who resist Him, who work against His merciful guidance through a will which is completely opposed to divine will never feel the working of the Spirit within themselves. Thus the desire for God must always be present. The human being must affirm the eternal deity, then the Spirit of God can become effective in him. And then God again chooses the people who are willing to do what He announces to them through His Spirit. He chooses those who are suitable as instruments, for they shall be in charge of an office. And again, the human being's will is decisive to spread what he has received. For if the Spirit expresses itself out of God, He wants to speak to all people through those people. The recipient of the divine word is the organ of speech of Him who gives His word to man. But not everyone grasps his task and carries it out by passing on the delicious gift of heaven to his fellow human beings. And God knows about people's will. The Spirit from God certainly pours itself upon anyone who sincerely desires Him and will guide his thoughts correctly. Yet where it obviously works for the salvation and blessing of humanity, people should clearly recognize that the Spirit from God descends upon a willing earthly child. God chooses the bearers of the divine Spirit Himself. He allows divine content to flow to those whom He deems worthy of receiving it and who have subordinated their will to His will of their own accord. It is indeed God's will that all people shape themselves in such a way that they are worthy of His gift, yet human will often goes its own way, and these are not suitable as God's instruments. But God, who knows everyone's heart, will make Himself known wherever He finds the willingness to serve Him, and thus God's Spirit will blow wherever God wills it. Amen.